people.
I call the honourable member for McMahon.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I move the motion relating to the Assyrian people in the terms in which it appears on the notice paper. Mr Deputy Speaker, the parliament this week is focused, quite rightly, on the budget and on the robust political debate in Australia. But we shouldn't forget that there are people around the world facing the most horrendous of circumstances. Included in that are the Syrian people of Iraq and Syria, who are currently being subject, it must be said, to genocide. The Assyrians, the indigenous Christian people of Iraq and Syria, have long suffered persecution, particularly since the fall of Saddam Hussein. But since the rise of ISIS, Islamic State, we have seen an attempt to eradicate the Assyrian people, to destroy their culture and their heritage. Recently, the United States Secretary of State described ISIL as genocidal by self-proclamation, by ideology and by actions. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has said, "I'm sure we now have enough evidence that what is happening is genocide, deliberately aimed at destroying not only the lives but wiping out the existence of Christians, Yazidis and other religious minorities in the Middle East in territory controlled by ISIS." It is right and proper that this House associates itself with these sentiments and declares that enough is enough. The genocide must stop. The Syrian people have been subject, of course, to persecution for many, many years. The world has witnessed the destruction of Assyrian holy sites, of ancient cultural artefacts and the obliteration of places of worship. We've seen the footage of masked men with sledgehammers rampaging through museums and galleries in an attempt not only to kill Assyrians but to destroy the heritage and culture of this great and ancient civilisation. It cannot be allowed to occur. It is right and proper that the United Nations Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide make recommendations through the Secretary-General to the Security Council to recognise, prevent and halt crimes being perpetrated by Islamic State. It is also right, as we have said before, the member for Fowler, the member for Cornwall and other members of the House, with the support of the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, have said before that it is right also that we plan for a post-Islamic State world for the Assyrian people in which they can live in Iraq in particular in freedom, in their homeland in freedom, with all the necessary protections and the necessary ability to make their own decisions within Iraq for their own protection. This is very important. We can't simply wait and hope and pray and work for the defeat of Islamic State without planning for the future. The Assyrian community in Australia has been very vocal in ensuring this is the case, particularly the Syrian Universal Alliance, led by Hermes Shaheen and David, who again have worked with myself, the member for Cornwall, the member for Fowler, the member for Kingsford Smith and the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, and have met with the Leader of the Opposition to progress this case. And it is them, I know, who are also very keen to see this motion adopted in the House of Representatives, as does every Assyrian Australian, as does every Australian concerned about human rights anywhere. The Assyrian people had been forced from Iraq in massive numbers. Many of them were forced from Iraq into Syria, seeking refuge in Syria, and they have now been forced out of this nation, which has given them some degree of protection over the last 10 years, into other countries in the Middle East. Many Assyrians have sought and achieved home in Australia, refuge in Australia. They have become fine and upstanding Australians, but they do not rest and will not rest until their brothers, their sisters, their cousins can achieve the same protections as they do, and not necessarily by seeking asylum elsewhere. I have not met an Assyrian who seeks to leave Iraq out of choice. Assyrians have been forced out of Iraq. This is a land which has provided their homeland for thousands of years. This is an ancient and noble civilisation which has done so much for the world. They have been subject, as I said, to terrible, terrible incidents since the fall of Saddam Hussein, but none worse than what they are being subjected to now, which it can clearly, soberly and regretfully be concluded is genocide. Attempted genocide which cannot be allowed to succeed. We cannot look back on this age and think if only the world had done more, we would not have lost one of the world's great civilisations, the ancient Assyrian civilisation. The ancient Assyrian civilisation which has given the world so much over many thousands of years, and it is time for the world to step in and offer them some protection in return.
Is the motion seconded?
I second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. The question is that the motion be agreed to. The time